At an academy, a bunch of boys gathered around Sky Vincent, the main guy. Sky thought it was weird how everyone cared so much about having big mana pools, like that's what made someone really special. Most of the top kids believed the same thing. Everyone already knew Sky came from a noble family, which was no secret. One boy, Bargana, called Sky dumb and said it didn't matter where he came from because a kid like him had no real power. Sky remembered that if a mage didn't have at least 1,000 mana by age 15, they were considered low rank, like B class. He was honestly tired of all the drama around him. Bargana got mad and tried to attack Sky with magic, but another kid stopped him, saying magic wasn't allowed there. Sky thought that even if a B-class mage became noble, people would still just call them B-class nobles. Bargana shrugged it off, saying his water magic meant even if he got hurt, he wouldn't die. Sky used his own power to shut that down and decided to walk away, leaving the others confused about what just happened. Sky thought Bargana was still as slow as ever. Flashback to 2 years earlier, at Sky's mansion. When testing his mana, it was found that his level was only 5. The guy doing the test told Sky's dad that all his brothers had mana over 1,000, but Sky's magic was actually null, meaning none at all. Sky's dad was shocked and said such failure wasn't fit for their family name. After that, Sky's family basically gave up on him, but he decided to make the best out of the situation and enjoy his new kind of freedom. He spent most days in the forest nearby. One day, while sitting in a tree, he pointed at a flying bird and somehow shot it down. When the bird landed, he got ready to start a fire and cook it. Just as he was about to do that, someone grabbed him, stopping him from making the magic bullet. A man appeared, excited to meet someone with a null magic like himself. The man, named Ans, said he wanted to show Sky something. They sat down together, cooking the bird to eat. Ans apologized for making Sky share such a tasty bird, but Sky told him not to worry. Sky even called Ans uncle and asked about what he wanted to show him. Ans was confused about being called uncle, and Sky said he meant the part about sharing the null magic attribute. Ans admitted he had said that. Sky wondered if he could ever use magic like Ans did. Since Sky called him uncle, Ans reminded him he wasn't really his uncle. Sky quickly apologized and introduced himself properly, then asked Ans to teach him the magic he used, which Sky thought was some kind of ability to seal others' magic. Ans thought about Sky's request and said he didn't mind teaching him, but wasn't sure it was a good idea. When Sky asked why, Ans explained that the spell he used, called spellbinding, could only be done by those with a magic attribute. He said that if Sky practiced a lot, maybe he could learn it, but the spell used a huge amount of mana. 980. Sky was stunned since he only had 5 mana. Feeling down, he sat back. Ans went on to say that the spell took 3 seconds to cast, which was why many thought the null attribute was bad for mana efficiency. Then Ans asked if Sky knew about magic velocity. Sky said yes, and explained that mana pool, magic attribute, mana cost, magic manipulation, and magic velocity were the basics of magic. Magic velocity meant how fast a spell hit its target, which varied by spell and user. Faster spells worked better. While chewing on the meat, Ans interrupted and said Sky's idea was totally wrong. Sky got frustrated, asking why Ans thought so. Ans said the world had been peaceful for so long that wrong ideas about magic velocity had spread. He said it was better called magic conversion velocity. Sky had never heard that term and was confused. Ans said it'd be easier to understand if Sky experienced it instead of just hearing about it. They both stood up, and Ans said he'd cast a binding spell on Sky. Since the spell took 8 seconds to cast, Ans told Sky to start counting as he began. Sky agreed and started counting. When he reached 10, he suddenly felt the spell take effect. Ans asked if he noticed. Sky said it took 10 seconds for the spell to activate. Ans said yes, but actually 9.2 seconds. The extra 1.2 seconds was the conversion lag. Sky asked if that meant Ans was slow. Ans said no. His magic conversion rate was 87%, while the average was 50%. That meant at 50%, it would take 16 seconds to activate. Looking at Sky, Ans said he was already faster than 87%. Wizards with 100% conversion were legends called the lagless. Sky had the chance to be one since he was faster than anyone else. If he could shoot more mana bullets than others, he'd be both the fastest and strongest mage. Sky felt excited thinking about it. Ans said if Sky wanted, he'd train him to become a legendary legless. Sky was flattered, but scared. He admitted his tiny mana pool, the reason his family abandoned him, made him doubt he could live up to Ans's hopes. He apologized for not being good enough. Ans sat quietly for a moment, thinking things over. He told Sky that the size of his mana pool didn't really matter to him. Sky reminded him that Ans had just said the mana pool was important, but Ans said that what really mattered were the legendary lagless, which was why meeting Sky was special. Sky wondered who would even let him step outside with a mana pool as low as 5, feeling like a shame to the Vincent family. Suddenly, he got fired up and said maybe it was him who should say that, and called Ans master. Ans suggested they start by testing Sky's skills. He pulled out 3 small stones and told Sky to try shooting a mana bullet at them. Sky took the stones, curious what they were for. Ans explained they were tools to check Sky's skill level, magic conversion speed, and magic conversion rate, but promised to explain more later. Sky aimed and shot at a nearby tree, breaking it with his attack. Ans hurried over to look at the numbers on the stones in Sky's hand. After checking, he said Sky's magic conversion speed was an impressive 95%. Sky asked if that was good. Ans went on to say Sky's proficiency was 82 and his magic conversion rate was 98%. He was amazed and asked if Sky was really a prodigy blessed by the gods. Sky thought about it, wondering if that could be true. Ans was thrilled by the results, way beyond what they expected. Sky remembered that just a year before, he'd felt abandoned by the gods. After that, training started. With Ans's help, Sky practiced shooting at trees and they shared meals. At night, Ans taught him from books, pushing him hard. After 6 months of tough training, Ans said it was time for Sky to get some real experience. They needed money, and this was the first step. At the Adventurers Guild, Sky felt like there was no turning back. Ans spoke to the receptionist, saying they wanted a job. The woman welcomed them and showed the available quests. Ans picked one and said they'd take it. They headed to snowy mountains, and Sky guessed they might have to fight a snow yeti. Ans agreed, saying since Sky's mana pool was now over 50, that would be a good challenge, and the reward was decent. As Ans described what life would be like in the mountains, a loud noise suddenly came closer. Sky felt the ground shake a bit, and Ans pointed out that the noise was coming from where Sky was looking. Suddenly, the snow yeti showed up, pounding its chest and letting out a loud roar. Ans warned Sky to be careful because the yeti was using magic, specifically dark magic that would boost its physical power for about 3 minutes. Ans explained the spell took 4 seconds to cast and lasted 6 seconds. He asked Sky if he got what that meant. Sky figured out the Yeti's magic conversion rate was 66% and realized this was how magic speed was measured in real fights. When the Yeti lunged at them, Sky used his powers to block the attack. The Yeti tried again, and Sky quickly fired a different spell, which hit the creature and made it scream. Feeling more confident now, Sky thought with the Yeti slowed down. He could handle it alone without Ans's help. He made a magic circle and said he could beat the Yeti by himself. The Yeti fell down, and Ans said it was a good fight and over. But just when Sky thought he'd won, the Yeti got up again, surprising him. The Yeti charged, roaring, and Sky flinched as pain shot through his eyes. It was almost close enough to hit him, and panic set in. Ans jumped in, using his power to push the Yeti back. He noticed the roar was similar to Sky's mana bullet and said the Yeti had a special skill it hadn't fully used yet. Ans told Sky if they'd known about that spell earlier, they could have avoided the mess. The Yeti charged again. Sky knew he still didn't fully understand his magic, but there wasn't time to think about it now. He focused on what to do next. Creating several magic circles, he got ready to attack. Ans noticed how much faster Sky was casting spells now. After landing multiple hits, the Yeti threw a huge rock at Sky. He dodged and kept firing at it even faster, determined that the faster he acted, the less chance he had of losing. Ans was amazed that Sky could cast so many spells at once with such speed. Sky made up his mind to shoot 1,000 magic bullets before the Yeti could get close, aiming to be the fastest mage alive. In that moment, his magic conversion speed hit a perfect 100%. After a non-stop storm of attacks, the Yeti finally collapsed, defeated. Sky felt a huge rush of joy. Ans was even happier, announcing that Sky's mana bullets had reached the legendary 100% magic conversion speed, making him a true lagless magician. Ans was stunned to see such a miracle and hadn't expected this moment. Proud, Sky admitted that reaching 100% meant he was now lagless and thanked Ans for everything. But he knew there was still a lot to learn, so he asked Ans to keep teaching him. Ans smiled warmly and said he'd be happy to. Then Ans told Sky to carry the Snow Yeti back to town, reminding him that even this was part of his training. Sky tied up the Snow Yeti with a rope and started dragging it back toward town. Ans climbed on top of the Yeti, adding extra weight for Sky to pull. When they brought the Yeti to the guild, the receptionist praised them, saying it was impressive to take down an A-rank demon on their very first mission. That's when Sky realized the job was actually an A-rank task. Ans told him not to worry about it, but for Sky it felt like a huge accomplishment. He thought the whole thing made him quicker and taught him a lot. Ans mentioned that he checked their spells' mana conversion rate and proficiency, and both had hit a perfect 100%, which amazed Sky. Feeling a bit embarrassed, Sky asked Ans not to make a fuss about it and realized he hadn't even explained those two things to Ans yet. Ans just laughed, saying Sky was as curious as ever. As they left the guild and walked through the busy streets, Ans explained that proficiency showed how skilled someone was with magic. For example, if the Sky from 6 months ago tried using mana bullets, his spells would be nowhere near as good as the Sky now. The magic conversion rate, on the other hand, showed how efficiently mana was used. If someone had a 50% conversion rate and cast a spell costing 100 mana, they'd actually use 200 mana to get the same effect as a perfect 100% conversion rate, which is the best in terms of mana use. Now Sky got it. If his conversion speed and rate were high, the size of his mana pool wouldn't really matter. Since his conversion rate was already at 100%, there was still a way to become even stronger. He asked Ans what that was, and Ans said it was time to get him a wand. They went into a weapon shop, and while Sky looked around, Ans explained that using a wand could make his magic stronger. Wands were made from materials that let mana flow through better than the human body, so picking the right shape was important. Sky wondered about the shape, and Ans said it didn't have to look like a tree branch. Things like magic compatibility, design, and personal taste affected how powerful the spells would be. Some people liked sword-shaped wands, others preferred fan-shaped ones. Sky had to think about what shape would fit his style best. Since his mana was low, a wand that used a lot of mana wasn't a good idea. Plus, his best feature was his speed, and he couldn't just rely on his hands. With his mana bullets proficiency at 100, his strength was in long-range attacks, shooting bullets fast. Suddenly, he had an idea for a weapon that would suit him perfectly. A few days later, Sky and Ans were out in the forest. Ans told Sky he found a way to test how strong his mana bullets were with the wand. Sky was all for it. Ans marked a spot on a tree with a cloth and told Sky to shoot it with a mana bullet that would absorb the mana. "Go all out," Ans encouraged him. Sky aimed carefully and shot at the target. Then Ans asked where the idea of a gun-shaped wand came from. Sky explained that since he could cast spells with both hands, having two wands made sense. They could tell how strong Sky's magic was by checking how much the cloth changed color from where the bullet hit out to the edge. Even without the wand, Sky's mana bullets already had a power level of 200. Ans looked at him and asked, surprised, what that number was. Then he noticed it had jumped to 500. Usually, a wand only boosts magic by about 10–30%, and the strongest boost Ans had seen was 50%. But he'd never heard of one that could more than double power like this. Sky's skills seemed almost superhuman now, and the wand fit him perfectly. As they looked over the results, Ans asked how many main types of magic there were. Sky said there were 4: beginner, intermediate, advanced, and forbidden magic. Ans agreed, but said they should forget forbidden magic for now, because the other 3 were more important. He said this system had been around for ages, and asked if Sky noticed anything odd about it. Sky pointed out that beginner spells took about 1 to 2 seconds to cast, intermediate ones 3 to 4 seconds, and advanced magic was fixed at 6 to 7 seconds. Also, beginner magic was meant for single targets, intermediate could hit several, and advanced was powerful enough for wide area attacks. Ans thought that was great, and joked that if he wasn't such a legendary mage who never lagged, he'd want Sky as his healing student. Sky was confused and asked what he meant. Ans reminded him that despite his looks, he was actually a healing mage, which surprised Sky a lot. Then Ans added that there were 3 more magic categories based on power that Sky wouldn't find in any book. He mentioned that Sky's mana bullets fired in 0.1 seconds at power 200, but with the wand, power jumped to 500. Plus, because Sky could dual cast, he could fire 2 shots at once. Ans asked if Sky noticed that meant his power could hit 1000 in just 0.1 seconds. He also said Sky could cast advanced spells in just 0.2 seconds. Sky smiled and said he had a big mana pool and could get stronger using simple mana bullets. Ans thought that even though he felt he'd improved a lot in magic, seeing Sky made him realize he still had a long way to go. Then he asked if he could try using Sky's wand. Sky laughed and swatted Ans's hand away, saying he wasn't allowed to touch his precious wand. Ans was a bit shocked by that. They kept training, and 6 months went by. One evening, by a campfire in the forest, Ans told Sky he was very talented, never gave up, and had done a great job following his lessons. Sky was surprised and asked why he said that now. Ans explained it had been almost a year since they met. Sky had become a legendary mage without lag, and since Ans had taught him everything, it was time for him to finish his journey and go back home. Sky wondered if Ans was really leaving Vincent's lands. When Ans said yes, Sky looked down, feeling a bit sad. Ans shared that he felt bad about leaving everything to his dad, and mentioned a fiancé waiting for him back home. Sky was surprised and asked when Ans got engaged and what he was doing there. Ans said he'd been looking for a legendary figure for years, just like his master had told him, and after 3 years he finally found Sky. Sky told him to hang on, guessing his fiancé might think he ran off. Ans smiled and said she loved him too much to worry. Spending that year with Sky meant a lot to him, and he thanked him sincerely. Sky stepped back and bowed, saying it was his honor. Ans told him not to mention it. He really wanted to do it. Sky reminded him that it had been 4 years total, including the time Sky trained with him, so maybe Ans should go back to his fiancée. Calmly, Ans joked that if Sky rushed him, he might stick around a bit more. Sky shouted for him to get home. Ans agreed he'd leave in about a week. Sky said he'd better start preparing some preserved food before then. Ans stood up and asked if spending a whole week preparing was really worth it. Then he suggested one last fight for old time's sake. Sky laughed and said, Ans better not cry if it messed up his trip. The next morning, they faced each other. Sky pulled out his guns and started shooting at Ans. Ans immediately recognized the dual casting, but started running, dodging shots. After a hit, Ans ducked behind a tree and said he was at a disadvantage in a gunfight. Sky fired at the tree, and when it crashed down, he realized Ans wasn't there. He stopped shooting, wondering if he missed something. Everything he'd read rushed back, especially about a spell called concealment. He looked behind and saw Ans hiding. Sky thought about using a binding spell that would take 0.2 seconds to reach Ans. Even with dual casting, he could only fire 2 magic bullets, which wouldn't be enough to win. If it turned into close combat, Sky knew he'd lose. As Ans got ready to attack, Sky smiled, remembering when he became lagless and discovered a hidden power inside. He could use this ability for 10 seconds, cutting his mana bullet's cast time in half to 0.05 seconds, and his mana conversion would double to 200%. This meant using only half the usual mana while making his skills twice as strong. Sky decided to activate that power and shot magic bullets at Ons with the 200% mana speed. The bullets hit hard and knocked Ons back. Sky wondered if it worked, but when he checked, Ons was down and probably had been hit too hard. After 2 weeks, Ons was finally ready to leave. He told Sky that he saved the best for last, even though it meant a full week of rest afterward. Sky apologized, but Ons said it wasn't necessary. Then he praised Sky's 200% mana speed and said firing bullets in 0.05 seconds was incredible. He told Sky how strong he'd become and offered a handshake, asking Sky to be his student until they met again. Sky promised they would meet again soon. After that, Ans left. 6 years passed. When Sky turned 15, his mana pool reached 999. Since he hadn't gone over 1,000, people called him the BB Mage. Being the son of a count, he decided to join the top magic academy in the county, wondering how far he could go without getting kicked out. About a year before Sky started at the High Magic Institute, he showed up at the Vincent family home and met his dad. His father pointed out it had been a while since he'd seen Sky and noticed how much he'd grown. Sky shot back that he'd gotten this far without anyone's help, not even his father's. His dad sighed, saying that when Sky turned 15, his mana pool still wouldn't pass 1,000 points. Sky said he was already aware of that. Then his father mentioned that at first, he didn't want Sky to join society, but he'd changed his mind. He asked if Sky knew about the High Magic Institute, where he was supposed to go next year. Sky reminded him it was the best magic school in the country, packed with the top nobles and commoners alike, including his own brother. Sky started to leave and asked if his dad was crazy for sending him to a school full of nobles, saying it sounded like asking for trouble. His father explained that Sky's brother Terran had a royal princess interested in him, which made the family's future tricky. With the heir uncertain, Sky was meant to be a backup, especially if something happened to their second son, Sul. Basically, they were grooming him as a replacement to get a proper education. Sky refused, saying there was nothing in it for him. His father begged him not to be stubborn, apologized for past mistakes, and said Sky had to think about the family and go to the institute for their sake. Angry, Sky clenched his fists and told his dad he owed nothing to that family. As he turned to walk away, his father stood and said that even if Sul inherited everything, Sky would still get a third of the land. They couldn't let him say no, that's why they had to try this last option, even if it wasn't the father's favorite. Sky thought about having a third of the land and figured it wasn't a bad deal. Graduating from the institute would earn society's respect and open doors. Even if he dropped out, he'd still be a count, which could help later, especially if he resisted them. After a moment, Sky turned back and said he'd enroll, but warned his dad not to interfere with him while he was at school or after he graduated. His father agreed and said he didn't want that either. Then his father added that if Sky wanted to avoid drama with the nobles, he should try not to stand out too much. Sky shut the door, muttering that he already knew how much his father hated him. After that, he went outside to practice shooting beasts with his gun. Frustrated with his dad, Sky thought that even if his father wouldn't stay out of his life, at least he could help with living expenses. After that, Sky tied the bears he'd hunted together and dragged them over to the Adventurers Guild. The receptionist there complimented him, saying it was impressive he'd taken down 2 A-rank monsters in one day. She added she wasn't surprised, since he held the record for the fastest Snow Yeti subjugation. She admitted she'd been nervous about giving him the gold card, but was glad she did, seeing how well he used it. Then she handed him his reward and the gold card. Other adventurers nearby were buzzing about how young Sky was to have a gold card. One guy mentioned it had only been a month since Sky defeated an A-class monster. A girl overheard and wondered if this was the same person. Taking her chance, she came up to Sky and introduced herself as Elita Tungaloy from a Marquis family. She said she was starting at the High Magic Institute that year too, and also had a gold card. Having one at their age meant word traveled fast. She asked if he really took down 2 A-class monsters alone, suggesting he must be quite the prodigy. Then she asked if he was going to the same school and what his name was. Sky said he didn't like sharing his name. She smiled and told him that was the wrong move, since a Marquise had just introduced herself first. It'd be rude not to return the favor. Plus, since they'd be in the same class for 3 years, it'd be easier for her to find out anyway. Sky was caught off guard by the idea of being in the same class. When she asked if he didn't know, she explained that the institute sorted students into classes from A to E based on skill, with A being the top group. Sky figured this wasn't going to be good for him, but figured she'd find out eventually. He finally told her his name, and she immediately recognized him as part of the House of Vincent. She said it made sense he was so talented. He was a count's son. Then she asked about his mana pool. Sky stayed quiet and she looked puzzled. He wondered if she really didn't know who he was, since he was famous in the Vincent family and she seemed kind of clueless. She leaned in and said he was trying to hide his mana pool, but that didn't matter. They'd be rivals going after the top spot. With a smile, she said it'd be fun since she'd never had a rival who could keep up, and now she finally had one. After she left, Sky was left wondering what had just happened. On the first day of school, Sky walked into a room and saw a card on the desk with his evaluation results. It showed he was assigned to Class E based on his performance. He wasn't surprised. Sitting in class, he thought about how everything seemed to revolve around mana pool size. No one with less than 1,000 mana points really belonged in a school like this. The other students seemed able to use about 14 to 15 different types of magic on average. Outside the classroom, a group of boys noticed Sky and started talking about the BB Mage. Their voices grated on his nerves. He figured trying to shut them up would just cause more trouble, but the gossip alone made him want to blast them away. One boy mentioned there were several standout students this year. Another asked if he meant elite from Class A, who supposedly had a mana pool of 28,000 at 15 years old, the highest ever recorded. The first boy then pointed out Lady Sophia Nasher, the king's 6th child. He said she'd been weak since she was little, so she got placed in Class E because of her health. The second boy said all he could do was admire how pretty she looked. The first boy agreed and added that if they were in the same class, he'd protect her no matter what. Sophia happened to overhear this and smiled softly. The boys got more excited, commenting on how gentle her smile was. Sophia looked up at the sky, which seemed totally indifferent to everything happening below. Days went by, still the 14th day of school. One afternoon, Sophia came up to Sky and said she wanted to tell him something important after class and that she'd wait for him behind the school. Then she walked to her seat, and Sky didn't respond. He thought it was strange for someone from the royal family to call him out like that, and wondered if maybe she was going to confess to him. He wasn't sure she'd ever actually do that. After school, Sophia waited alone behind the building, but when Sky didn't show up, she went to the boys' dorm and knocked on his door. Surprised, Sky got up and opened it. Seeing her, he remembered her earlier request and said that even though she asked to meet, talking to her might cause problems. She asked what kind of problems. He explained that he already stood out too much and worried she might bring people to attack him or want to face him one-on-one. He wasn't ready for a fight, but also knew fighting her could ruin his peaceful school life. Sophia said that wasn't why she wanted to talk. Curious, he asked what it was about, secretly hoping it was a confession. She looked shocked and asked why he'd think that. Feeling nervous, he told her to stop overthinking. She just wanted to make a declaration. He asked what kind of declaration. She told him she was Professor Ans's top disciple. He was confused, wondering why he was hearing his master's name suddenly. Then she said she was declaring war on him. That was the real reason she joined Class E. He asked if it wasn't because of her illness. She said that was a lie and started explaining. Her story went back to when she was young. Professor Ans had always been there, teaching her magic properly. But after he came back from his trip, all he talked about was Sky, and she couldn't stand it anymore. She admitted she already felt weak, but this made her feel worse. Sky said it wasn't really his fault. Sophia told him she'd finally met the person her professor talked about so much, but honestly, he didn't seem all that impressive. Sky called Professor Ans master, and she quickly told him not to be so casual about it, even raising a finger to make her point. She claimed Ans was only hers, and though she didn't know what this legendary lagless thing was, she bragged about having a magic conversion rate of 93%. Sure, Sky got to have Ans first since he became legless earlier, but Sophia was planning to catch up and win the professor's attention for herself. As she left, she told him to enjoy his little moment of superiority while it lasted. Sky stepped outside and watched her walk away, noticing how fresh and confident she looked. She was definitely a fiery one. He fell back onto his bed, quietly admitting to himself that he was beaten. Then, suddenly, there was a knock on his door. He wondered what was going on. Did she have more complaints to throw at him? When he got to the door, a note slid underneath instead, asking him to come to the school building. He felt a rush of excitement, curious who would be calling him out like that. If Baranga wanted to get mad just for the sake of it, he could go ahead and try his luck. Baran was asked to meet at the back of the school building, and he arrived there to find the boy angrily confronting him. The boy accused Baran of keeping him waiting for an hour and demanded to know who he thought he was. Baran responded by asking if the boy even realized how big the school was, and if it would have killed him, to be more specific. The boy shouted that Baran was speaking so loudly, especially for a BB mage, and that 5 years later he was still as obnoxious as ever. Baran wondered if he even knew who this boy was. The boy then told him not to act like he didn't know him, and that his history was clear. Baran reminded him not to ring the bells and mentioned that even though the boy referred to Case's family, they had a hereditary protruding chin. The boy retorted that Baran was still acting rude, but warned that he wouldn't let Baran get cocky. He had trained himself for the last 5 years and wouldn't be slow enough for Baran to use cheating magic on him anymore. Baran asked if he didn't think school fights were a problem. The boy replied not to worry, as the other students would witness that Baran was the one to hit him first, and he was only defending himself. Therefore, Baran would be the only one to face punishment. Baran understood that the boy had prepared for this moment, but Baran also had proof on his side: his invitation letter. The boy told Baran not to be surprised to hear that his mana pool was 12,000 and that he could use 56 different types of magic with a strong affinity for water magic. He then asked what Baran thought about these impressive numbers. Baran replied that the top student that year had a mana pool of 28,000, so the boy didn't seem so remarkable in comparison. At that moment, another boy approached and said it was fine, adding that his father had mentioned the top student that year was an anomaly. According to him, any student who exceeded a mana pool of 10,000 was considered excellent. The first boy became angry and shouted that Baran was just nobody whose mana pool didn't even reach 1,000, and how dare he laugh at his mana pool. Baran asked if the boy saw Baran laughing, and besides, he didn't think mana pool size was all that important. The boy insisted that it wasn't about the mana pool, it was Baran's attitude that pissed him off. The boy then took out a wand and said he hadn't planned on using his staff that day, but it seemed plans had changed. Baran noticed it was a pure gold staff and commented on the boy's terrible taste. The boy explained not to be surprised, as the genius he was, the staff had a high affinity with him, boosting the power of all his spells by 1.3 times. Baran responded, saying it wasn't that big of a deal. This angered the boy, who demanded to know what Baran had said. Baran calmly replied that he would prefer to keep his life peaceful, but he wouldn't show mercy to anyone who tried to pick a fight with him. Now, really mad, Baranga said he wouldn't let Sky off that easy, and there was no backing down. As he readied a spell, Sky recognized it as a simple water bullet, knowing it took about a second to cast. He didn't know exactly how fast Baranga could convert magic, but a second was plenty of time. Sky yelled, "Bullet!" and Baranga got knocked down. Sky thought Baranga was still way too slow. As Sky was about to leave, a guy was watching him from the school building. Later in class, Sky heard students whispering about someone beating Baranga, which caught him off guard. He wondered how the news got out and figured Baranga would do anything to hide losing to a newbie. Meanwhile, the guys who had disappeared with him just kept living quietly. Suddenly, Sophia slammed her fist on Sky's desk, making him jump, then walked away. He realized things weren't completely calm after all. Sky spent time in the library, hoping to finally enjoy a peaceful student life. He ate alone and slept well. While walking by himself, he thought it had been a long time since he'd been in the forest. Out of nowhere, he heard a boy yelling at a younger kid just for looking at something. A group of boys were surrounding the younger one, who kept saying he wasn't looking at anything. The first boy laughed like some kind of dinosaur. The younger kid told them they should respect nobles. Sky watched all this from his hiding spot, as the bully said they were doing the kid a favor by teaching him what happens when you disobey a noble. Just as the bully was about to use a Shatterstone attack, Sky quietly aimed his gun and fired, staying hidden so no one could tell who shot. The other boys were confused about what happened to their friend and asked the younger boy what he did. He insisted he hadn't done anything. Sky then shot at 2 more of the bullies, making them run away without knowing who attacked them. Feeling satisfied, Sky started to leave, thinking about heading back to his room for a nap. Suddenly, he felt someone run up beside him. When he looked, there was a girl and a boy standing there. Shocked, Sky wondered how they had sneaked up and how long they'd been there. The girl told him not to get worked up and said she didn't understand what he had just done. Sky asked if she meant his escape from the bullies, but she said no. She was talking about the spell that beat the noble earlier, saying she couldn't see it at all. Sky said he had no idea what she was talking about. She realized he was pretending not to know, and that was okay. She introduced herself as Surin Histoire, the student council president, and the boy beside her as Lengia Kest, the vice president. Surin mentioned that Lengia happened to see Sky's fight with Baranga the other day. Lengia said Sky had some pretty cool skills, which was why he'd been keeping an eye on him for a while. Sky was surprised because he hadn't even noticed Lengia before. He joked that the student council seemed to have interesting hobbies, like spying on people, and maybe they should focus on helping out instead of sticking their noses in stuff like what just happened. Sarun said they thought Sky could handle things, but now they needed to talk about his magic, whether he wanted to or not. When Sky tried to brush it off, she asked him to come along with them. Sky wasn't sure if she meant join them, so she explained there was a rule in the High Magic Institute, Section 12, that punished students who used magic without permission, with consequences decided by teachers or the student council. Lengia added that Sky had used a spell on school grounds without approval. Sky argued that others had used staves too, so why was he the one getting in trouble? Sarun agreed he had a point, but said the world and the student council weren't exactly fair. She promised she wouldn't punish him, but said she'd handle the others later. Sky complained it was unfair, and asked if she really agreed with that. Sarun said if he didn't want her to change her mind, he should come with them. She reassured him she wasn't going to do anything harmful, so no need to look so worried. Sky figured he'd just attracted some trouble. Once they got to the student council room, Sarun apologized for rushing him earlier but had an offer. She asked if he wanted to join the student council. Sky was surprised and wondered if they actually wanted him. She confirmed it, explaining they planned to pick 3 freshmen that year and she wanted him to be one. Being on the council came with perks like special privileges around school and their own budget. Plus, the rules against using magic on school grounds didn't apply to council members. She asked what he thought about that. She also mentioned that the student council was kind of the most important part of the school, making the invite even more tempting. Sky hesitated, not wanting a role that'd make him stand out more. Surin pointed out he already stood out plenty. He explained that was exactly why he wanted to stay under the radar. If he could just get through 3 years and graduate, he'd be free from his family's legacy and their expectations about territory. He didn't want extra responsibilities making his life harder for no good reason. Surin brought up the family's territory, saying she thought the inheritance would happen in 10 years, and that the royal family knew everything was supposed to go to the second son, Sul. She wondered if maybe there was some mix-up. Sky reminded her what his dad had said, that even if Sul got the house, their dad planned to give him only 1/3 of the land. That reminder made Sky angry. He said that if things were like that, then joining the student council made even less sense. His time at school was basically done. Surin asked if it was because he wasn't going to take over his territory. Sky nodded, agreeing he didn't see any point in staying. She said that was okay, but wondered if he was underestimating the power of House Vincent. After all, he was sent there as a backup, just in case something happened to Sol, the second son and heir. She warned that quitting now would look bad for the nobles. If Sul got into trouble or disappeared, their father David would be desperate for a successor, and the family head would be furious. Sky said, let the family head get mad. If anyone tried to block him, he'd handle it. Lengia advised against starting fights. Sarun reminded him about the Count's fierce anger and warned that he could end up fighting his own family, which was the last thing he wanted for his peaceful life. Sky asked if they really wanted him to stay at the school. Sarun confirmed, adding that if he joined the student council, Stephen would grant him anything he wanted, swearing by the Duchy of Histoire's name. That duchy was one of the 3 big powers in the Kingdom of Nash, and the Count of Vincent had major political influence worldwide. The duchy itself was known as a seriously powerful force. Surin smiled and said this was just a verbal deal for now, promising she'd draft a formal agreement later. Sky asked why she was pushing so hard for him to join. She said it was because he was interesting. Even though she understood his doubts, she thought joining the council would open doors for him as a BB mage and didn't see any downsides. Sky asked what exactly she wanted him to do. She stood up and said she just needed one thing, for him to use his mysterious magic to keep the students in line, like he did earlier. Sky thought controlling others wasn't exactly peaceful. She agreed, but pointed out that many complaints about violent magic incidents had come in last year. If they counted the unreported ones, it would probably be in the hundreds. Sky wondered if that was really so bad. Sarun said he'd seen that the school was like a mini version of society, nobles grouping together and often bullying the weaker ones. Sky had seen the unfairness and decided to step up. He said it was just a whim, not a desire to be a hero. Sarun disagreed, saying even if it started as a whim, she didn't think he could ignore such problems. Maybe how he acted was just who he really was. She urged him to join the council, saying those with power should use it wisely. Then she gave him a wristband, saying the council was the best place for him to show his true strength. Sky thought about all the broken promises of peace and the new hopeful path ahead. He accepted the band but set one condition. If he ever got tired, he wanted the freedom to walk away.